Hello everyone, welcome to Daily Dice. I'm Sam, and today we are going to be painting a black templar. I've had lots of requests about doing a painting tutorial on the templars, so today's the day. So as you can see, I've built this model in sub-assemblies. So you've got the torso, you've got the two arms, they're both just blue tacked onto them bases. You've got the head, the backpack, the cloak, and the two shoulder pads. I've done this just to make it easier when it comes to the painting process. As you can see, it's all been undercoated. The shoulder pads in white and all the rest in black. This guy's a sword brethren. He's going to be leading some Primaris Crusaders. I've already built the Crusader squad. I just need this guy to finish it off. So it'll be coming very soon in a battle report. So as you can see here, these are the rattle cans I used to do the undercoat. I used Chaos Black to do all the black parts, Grey Seer for the shoulder pads, and then I used a white scar to sort of zenithal highlight the shoulder pads, so just spray them from above, just where the light would be hitting. So first things first, starting with some Abaddon Black, and we're going to be doing a bit of airbrushing. If you don't own an airbrush, you can do this with just a normal paintbrush. And basically, we're just going to be spraying the model black. At the minute, it's been primed Chaos Black. So the reason for this is, if you make any mistakes later on, if you paint it in Abaddon Black to fix the mistake, it'll stand out like a sore thumb because the two blacks are actually quite different. So if you do this, any mistakes, and you go over with your Abaddon Black, it's already Abaddon Black, so you won't notice a big difference. And basically, all we're doing here is just spraying all the black parts. So we now get out the Incubi Darkness, and basically all we're doing here is picking out all the parts where the light would be hitting, just to give that black armour a nice bit of contrast. As you can see, just on the back of the leg, the upper torso, I'll probably try and get the knee pads there, just so it gives that effect that the light is bouncing off the armour. Make sure you get every bit. So obviously the helmet, just a tiny little bit at the top of the helmet there. Try not to overdo it because it's really easy to get trigger happy with the airbrush, and they end up just with a blue helmet. So just really sort of build it up in layers, just a tiny bit at first, then just add to it, and then you can always go back and add a little bit more. If you ever find that you've put too much of your highlight colour on, you can always go back to your shade colour, and in this case Abaddon Black, and reintroduce that back into the model, and just darken it down a little bit. So now we are using Corn Red, and we're just going to be doing the parts that are red. So in this case, the cloak and the gun casing for that heavy bolter. Of course, you could do this just with a normal brush. I'm doing it with an airbrush just because I had it out and just for ease. When you come to doing the gun casing, just try and be aware that obviously the hand and the arm I want to be staying black. I think it's inevitable that you'll get the red on them parts, and obviously you'll just paint over later with a bad and black again. So now that the red's dried, we're just going back over with that corn red again, and we're just layering it up to try and get that nice smooth finish. We'll now be getting the Wazdaka red out, and basically I'm just picking out any highlighted areas, so the parts of the cloak that are not in the creases, and basically this is just to give the cloak a nice bit of contrast. I don't do a massive amount with my cloaks. I try and just do the shade colour and the highlight colour, and then later on you'll see I'll go over with a little bit of weathering. I think less is more in this case. I quite like my cloaks just being quite minimalistic, and you can do this just with a brush or a dry brush as well, and it doesn't necessarily need to be an airbrush. So we are now going to be using a gloss varnish. I'm using Vallejo. I just find it comes out really nice through the airbrush. Mix that 50-50 with thinner, and we're just going to hit all parts of the model. I do this just because when I handle it later, I don't want to be pulling parts of paint off with the oils off my hands, so this gives it that nice bit of protection. So we're now starting with the brushwork. First paint is Zandri Dust to do the base colours on the tabard. I'm not sure where the footage went of my first layer, but this is basically starting at my second layer. And I ended up doing about 5 layers of this Zandri Dust, just because I'm really trying to avoid that thick paint, with the tabard being a massive part of the model. It stands out like a sore thumb, so I'm just thin layer after thin layer, and give it lots of time to dry in between. Also, as you can see there, I've already painted the base. That was also in the footage with the first coat on the tabard. And basically all I've done so far on the base is painted it with Rhinox hide, and then I sort of, while it was still wet, added some bits of Mournfang brown, just some lighter brown, just to give the base a little bit of contrast. I built that base just with a little bit of cork. I added a couple of rocks and a little skull. And while the tabard's drying, I just thought I'd add the same colour, Zandri Dust, to the skull on the base. So now we are going in with the Eshin Grey, and I'm going to do the rocks on the base. So as you can see, we keep going back to that tabard, adding on another watered down layer of Zandri dust, and just building up to that nice smooth finish. So now that I'm happy with the base colour on the tabard and the skull, I'm going in with some Sharpty bone, and I'm going to be adding some highlights. So we're just going to be picking out all the raised areas and all the parts of the tabard that the light would be hitting. Don't worry too much if the transition looks a little bit harsh at the minute, and we'll be going back later with some Zandri dust and glazing a little bit just to make it a little bit more smoother. So as you can see, we're just going back in with that Sharpty bone and building up another layer, just like we did with the Zandri dust, just so we've got a nice, consistent layer. So when you're fully satisfied with the highlights, you can move on to the glaze. Basically, I'm going to be using Zandri dust and creating a glaze with it, which is watering it down, almost like a wash, but a little bit more water, I'd say. If you use thinner, you're probably better off because it's longer drying time, but in this case I used water. And this is basically just to smooth out the transition between the sharp-T bone and the Zandri dust. As you can see, I'm just adding almost you can't see it. It's just the tiniest bit of Zandri dust, just where that your sharp-T bone meets the Zandri dust. You let it dry, give this lots of drying time, and then you just keep adding glaze, adding glaze, adding the glaze until you get that nice smooth transition. I find the best way to glaze is dip your brush in that pool of Zandri dust and then wipe it back off on your cloth. So you've just got the tiniest bit of watered down Zandri dust on your brush. Otherwise it ends up being too watery and you have problems. My hair making an appearance there. And if you're just wanting your army to be a tabletop standard, you wouldn't necessarily have to do this step. You could just skip this out. The reason I'm doing it really is because I wanted this Black Templar project to be to a high standard, and that is probably why I'm never going to finish the project. Yeah, I thought I'd leave the footage in of how many layers I actually do with glazing and how many layers I did when doing the Zandri dust on the tabard. Just because I really want to stress this is really what creates the effect on the tabard. It just takes a lot of time, but it really is worth it. And as you can see there, a nice smooth finish. So now we're going to be moving on to Screaming Skull and just doing the final bit of highlighting. We're not adding much of this at all, just to the real sharp edges of the tabard. So as you can see at the top there, and just the sort of, like I say, the sharp bits and the sharp corners, and a little bit on the skull as well, just to give it that real nice contrast. And there we have it, finished tabard. A lot of time spent on the skull that I actually end up airbrushing over by mistake at the end of this video. So time well spent there. So now we're going to be moving on to the Dawnstone and just picking out the highlights on them rocks that I did earlier. So now moving on to corn red, and we're just going to be doing them seals that are just flowing down across his chest there. So again, just another couple of thin layers, try and get that nice smooth finish. It's at this point I noticed that I missed a bit of the tabard. It was just poking out just behind that seal there. So just go back over with some Zandri dust, and again with some Screaming Skull, just to highlight it. So here I'm going to use some Abaddon Black. I'm going to do a line in between the tabard and the seal. It was just a little bit of a funny transition. So giving it that black line sort of separates the two and just makes it a little bit more neater. You don't necessarily have to do this, but I think it's just a nicer finish in the end. And again, just my hair making an appearance. When I was doing these detailed bits like this, I like to hold the model really close to my face. So I found it really hard trying to keep my head out of the way of that camera. So just going back in with that corn red and just doing another thin layer. while I've got the red out, I just add some to that cloth wrapping around the sword, sort of emblem on his leg. Now moving on to Wazdaka Red, and we're just going to be picking out them highlights. And then finishing off with Evilson Scarlet, just get the real sharp edges, just do them final highlights and give it that nice contrast. So now we're moving on to the leather. We're going to be getting the belt, starting with some Rhinox hide, and just doing a nice base layer across that. So my leather recipe has actually changed now. I usually use them at like a Gawthor brown, but this army I want to keep it all like regimented. So I'm sticking with a Mornfang brown, and we're going in with that. So obviously use whatever you prefer for your leather recipe. But basically all we're doing now is picking out some highlights. So just that edge highlighting on the belt, and we're just picking out them raised edges as well. So we're finishing off with some scrag brown on that leather. We're just picking out the final highlights, so just the real sharp edges and any sort of part of the belt that is facing upwards towards the light. So while that's drying, we're going to go in with some null oil gloss, and we're going to hit that base just to make it look very wet and glossy, and just give it that sort of boggy marshland type feel. I have a feeling this null oil gloss is actually discontinued now, but if you want to get the same effect, just buy a gloss varnish. You can go over with null oil. When that's dried, go over with the varnish. And as you can see there, it gives it that nice, boggy, wet and mud look. So now we're going to start the edge highlighting on the armour, starting with Incubi Darkness. So you just want to be catching all them edges, fairly thick line. You don't need to worry too much about it being thin, because we are coming in after this with a bit of a thinner edge highlight. So the next edge highlight is Thunderhawk Blue, and again we're going to be going over that Incubi Darkness that we've just put down, but we're going to do it a little bit more thinner, a little bit more concentrated. So now with the Thunderhawk Blue, we're going to create a little bit of battle damage and do some scratches, just to give the look that these Marines have been through the wars, but also trying to keep with that heavy metal style. So we're going to be finish off the edge highlighting with Fenrisian Grey, and now we're just really going to be picking out them sharp edges. So now we're going in with the lead belcher to do all the metals, all the metallics, so like the belt buckle, there's a few little bits on the belt, and also some like little rivets on the armour. I like to make metal just to make them stand out a little bit. So now we're going in with some null oil and just hitting them metal parts. Try your best not to get any pooling. If anything pools, just go in with a dry brush and it'll soak that back out. So same process on the heads, the backpack and the arms, and the edge highlighting your metals. But I thought I'd record getting the lenses because I think it's worth knowing. So I go in with some wire flesh. It's quite a dark green, and we'll just get a base for the lenses there. So we're now going with some warpstone glow, and just get sort of the middle of the lens, leaving a little bit of that wire flesh poking out the edges. Then we are going to add some moot green, and with this I try and sort of aim towards the bottom of the lens, just to add a bit of contrast to that green. So now we're going to add some white scar into that moot green. This is what really gives the effect of the Space Marine surroundings. It makes a reflection in the lens. So I just do 2 dots in each lens, one at the top and one at the bottom. So now we're going into the shoulder pads. We're going to be doing corn red around the trim of the shoulder pad. I know this is a sword brother, and they usually have black shoulder pads with a red trim and the red cross, but my OCD just won't let me have different colour shoulder pads throughout the army, so I've stuck with the different colour trims and crosses to show what each unit is, and I've kept the white shoulder pad throughout the army. So I don't like to put too much pressure on it, but you really need to try and keep off the white here, and just stick at the trim. If you do go on the white, it's not the end of the world, but because it's rattle canned on, it might just stand out a little bit when you come to correcting it. So now with a Wazdaka red, and going over that, doing the highlights. So basically just edge highlighting all that red you've just done. Again, just adding a few of them subtle scratches, just so the naked eye can't see it, but when you look a little bit closer, you can see all these little details, which really makes the model stand out. So we've now moved on to the Evil Sun Scarlet, just to get the final highlight of that red. So we're just picking out the sharp bits and the bits pointing up towards the light. So I didn't bother recording the next step. My head just would have been in the way of the camera the whole time. And I did what I did earlier with that them seals past the tabard on the chest and basically black lined around the edge of that shoulder pad and around the cross, just to so you could separate the two, the white and the red. Then I went over with a white scar just next to the black line and just sort of went alongside it. Sort of, as you can see, next to that black line I'm doing now is a nice white edge along that as well, just to make the shoulder pads pop a little bit. So just to finish off the shoulder pads, we're going back in with them metallics, lead belcher, and I'm just going to do the little skull in the middle of that cross, and I'm also going to get them rivets along the top of the shoulder pad. And finishing off with that trusty null oil. So I'm just going to get some PVA glue now, and we're going to stick some grass tufts onto the base, and also, as you can see, a little bush. I'm just using the Citadel tool there that you use to spread the paste on the base. I find it really handy to push them tufts into little corners. You can't get it in with your finger. I'm just adding a few different tufts here just to give the like landscape a bit of variety, just make it look a little bit more realistic. Now, I hadn't really planned on doing this when I thought of doing this video, but I wanted to just add a little bit something extra since I was recording it for YouTube. So I thought I'd add a nice Templar cross decal to the cloak. So I'm just putting some microsol on it there. That just it's basically just instead of water, and it just helps manipulate that decal a little bit more. When I actually stick this cross on the cloak, I realise that it's too big, because there's a sort of fold in that cloak where the cross would go behind. As you can sort of see me putting it down there, it goes actually over the fold. So I have to remove that, and I try and cut a new cross while it's still on the paper, and cut it in line with that fold. And here is the new cross. So as you can see on the left of it, I've just cut a little line. I sort of just winged it. I didn't do any measuring or anything. And just hope that it sits on the cloak, what looks like it's in the center, and goes behind the fold. So fingers crossed, people. And voila. A little bit of moving about just to make it look like it's in the center, and it looks like the cross is just tucking behind that fold, so it comes out pretty cool. So I've got some Wazdaka red here, and I'm just adding some little dots, some little scratches, just to make that cross look a little bit worn. Now I think what brings out the full effect of a decal is when you hit it with the matte varnish at the end, because I think at the minute it really stands out and almost looks like it shouldn't be there, even with the scratches. And when you matte varnish it, it really blends it into its surroundings. It makes it look very natural. I'm also going to be hitting it with some more weathering. I usually put a little bit of dirt at the bottom of that cloak, and I'm hoping to catch the cross, just so it looks a little bit better. So the favourite part for me of painting the model is at the end when you build it all together and seeing the model come to life. A lot of these bits I did off camera just because it would have been a 3-hour long video otherwise. So there's just the arm with a bolt pistol. There's the other arm with the just the power weapon, which is the axe in this case. We've also got the backpack with a relic on top, and the head. So now we just glue it all together. I've started off with a cloak just because you need to put that on first before you put the backpack on. Then I'll get the arms on, get the head in position which way I want him to face, and then finish off with the shoulder pads. While editing this video, I've actually realised how many grey hairs I've got, which is quite concerning. I'm going to put that down to stress of life. And there we have the fully built sword brethren. Still a little bit more to do, but not a massive amount. I re-hit that cross just with a little bit more weathering. I wasn't 100% satisfied, so just a few more little scratches. So now I'm going to get the airbrush back out and go over with some Rhinox hide. Basically, I'm just hitting the very lower tabard and the lower cloak, trying not to get any more of the model, and also the lower feet as well, just to make him look like he's been trudging through all that mud. And like I said earlier, I'm trying to get that bottom of that cross just to give it that effect, and trying not to hit that skull, which I inevitably have just done. So after redoing the skull, I am hitting the model with Ultra Matte Varnish by Vallejo, 50-50 mix with thinner. And I think this is a really important step. It really ties all the model together. So I hope you've all enjoyed this video. Leave a comment for anything you'd like to see in the future or anything you change in the video. And I hope to see you all next time.